Welcome to Roll, Ponder, and Play, a podcast dedicated to crafting stories through the application of role-playing game engines, combined with creative thinking and propelled into the ether by the barest of prompts. I'm Jarrett Hess, taking on all the roles of Game Master, solo player, author, and narrator. Come with me on a journey, and together let us explore realms of shadow, danger, and wonder. One role can decide the fate of many things. Welcome to Shadow of the Demon, Episode 1. In our previous episode, we did a Session 0, showcased the previous 3 adventures our party had been on, bringing them from level 1 up to the lofty level of level 4. We introduced our characters and did some Craewan kingdom building, and then rolled up some details about our upcoming adventure. Before we begin, I forgot to mention how I generated the character statistics and why they are so super duper good. Well, I rolled 4d6 per stat, keeping the highest 3 d6s and dropping the lowest d6 value. And then I re-rolled the lowest ability score. It was something like that. And I freely admit that on some characters I rolled multiple times until I got a fairly heroic spread of characteristics. That's what I was going for. That doesn't mean they're all Adonises and that they can't be killed. It does mean that they are much more capable than your average peasant, though. I mean, look at Wrenchant the Wizard. How often do you get a wizard character with a strength score above a 10 and a dex of 17? Wrenchant is a fun character to lean into play. You'll see why. And he is probably one who does consider himself to be an Adonis, if I must say so. Also, I wanted to mention that this format of this series will be different from my Queen of Shadows format. I'm not going to duck out of sound for all the different out-of-character moments. It's just a little bit too much work for what I'm going for here. I'll just run with the primary background setting, ambient track, and I may not also include every single sound effect. That's just a lot of work as well. And finally, you will notice that the writing isn't as polished as I typically like to have it. Things are a bit fast and loose here, and I switch very rapidly between in-character and out-of-character moments. But now, on to Episode 1 of Adventure 4, of the Shadow of the Demon. The weather is cold and clear as they set out early on the 3rd day. Puffs of white around mouths in the winter air, bundled against the cold with heavy fur-lined cloaks, they stamp their feet, and with some grumbling as the sky dawns pink in the east. It's a few days out. Is there anything dangerous, exciting, or interesting en route to Inolulan, the town that they are traveling to from Strathmore? I think that is somewhat unlikely, and I get a 7. Yes, but. What is it? I roll up agree/riches. Some swarthy men work on a bridge on a river, and they ask for a toll before the party's allowed to cross. They say the funds go to maintain the bridge and the surrounding road. Are they honest folk? There's a 50-50 chance I get a 6. Yes, but. Dosakin gets an 18 on his insight roll, and he can tell that they are not criminals. They're honest workmen and do maintain the bridge and the road, mostly. But there wasn't a toll when they came this way before, but now there is. We're on the king's errand. You had best let us pass or risk his wrath, Wrenchant says, and the crystal on his staff catches the sunlight. This lady is one of the Royal Rangers. See for yourself. Reyna shows her credentials as a Royal Ranger, and she gets an advantage on her persuasion. A total of 19 is her result. The workmen are grumpy about it, but they let the party pass without issue. What about the rest of the journey? Anything else happen? I think it's unlikely, and on a roll of a 1, I get a no and. The weather remains cold and bright each day, with equally cold and clear nights. After about 7 days of travel, they arrive at Inolulan. They've been here before. I assume Inolulan is also experiencing an influx of refugees. I think that's likely, and on a roll of a 10 I get a yes and. Inolulan is choked with people. The fountains are now frozen over, and the many temples have taken in many of the refugees, but even so they spill out onto the steps and the streets. Prices are multiplied by 2.5 here. That's a result of the yes and. The fishing industry continues with ice fishing out on the lake. The smells of cooking fish and sweet bread fill the air. Refugees turned beggars line the streets, and many guards are seen in the city. Are the merchants still well stocked? I think that is unlikely at this point, and on a roll of a 3, I get a no. The combination of the influx of refugees and slower trade in winter has dried up much of their stock. Many items for purchase are in high demand and available on a roll of 1 through 4, but a roll of a 5 and a 6 means they are out of stock. The layout of this town is appalling, Wrenchant grumbles. Look at the poor class huddling in the streets. It's unacceptable. Beggars throng around the party with outstretched arms as many guards keep them away from the more wealthy homes and areas. Crime must be on the rise here, Dosaka nods. Do the party get pickpocketed? I think it is likely. And on a roll of an 8, I get a yes. Alright, the attempt to pickpocket was rolled with a total of 7 plus 4 for an 11. And Reyna rolled a total of 25 to detect it. And was it a child? I think that is somewhat likely. But on a 1 I get a no and. As if on cue, Reyna feels a slight tugging on her pouch and sees the desperate eyes of an elderly man trying to pull at her pouch. The attempt is unsuccessful and she swats the hand away. We need to get off the streets. Follow me. And she pushes her way through the crowd. Are there any inns with vacant rooms? I think that is unlikely. On a roll of a 4, I get a no. But there was nowhere to go. Inn after inn had filled rooms. Are there any available stables they can stay in with their horses? A 50-50 chance, and I get a yes and. They find an inn with some spacious stables for a modest fee of 5 silver pieces per night, per beast or person. They can spend the night and food is carried out to them. So each will pay 15 silver pieces per night. Jarvis, with some grumbling now, still pays for Kendrock. For 1 draft horse, 1 riding horse, and 1 person, that's 15 silver pieces per person per night. Are there other patrons in the stables as well? I think that's somewhat likely. And on a roll of a 6, I get a yes. Are they bothered at night? Somewhat unlikely. On a roll of a 5, I get a no. I'm not sleeping with animals, Wrenchant says, incensed, and pulling his cloak about him, stomps off to the inn. You may choose to do so, but I shall speak with the proprietor of this establishment. He will find room for me. And with a 22 total on Wrenchant's persuasion and his flashing about copious amounts of coin, he pays the exorbitant 10 gold pieces per night and is set up in wealthy accommodations in a corner room on the inn's 2nd story, with windows overlooking the market corner. He smiles and twists the end of his beard in satisfaction when he considers how the rest of his party must be faring. Did anyone of ill repute see him flashing his gold about? I think that is likely, and on a 10, I get a yes and. With a twist, an emotional event / changes the goal. I see. Time for a mini-scene with Renchant, perhaps? What's the emotional event? Mistrust, a plot. And dangerously cute. A life of privilege. Renchant sighs an hour later as he sinks up to his nose in a hot bathtub. The servants had left the room and steam wreaths about him. After 7 days on the road, the perfumed rosewater is taking the kinks out of his muscles in luxurious fashion. After his bath, a back massage follows by a particularly beautiful young woman named Titania. After she leaves, then clean clothes. Then by himself with his feet up on a cushioned stool and drinking mulled wine while studying one of his favorite tomes. Renchant sees the snowdrift out the window outside, purged by the warmth and light from the inside. The nicker of horses from the stables nearby made him smile again. One could get used to this, he decides for the umpteenth time, taking a sip from his silver cup. Engrossed in his book, hours pass, and after some time he gets up to pour himself a refill. The only downside to wanting your privacy is you have to do everything yourself. He heats the silver pitcher with a murmur of magic, and soon steam curls up out of it. Silver pitcher in hand, that's when he sees the commotion outside. A young woman, strikingly beautiful, slips in the snow and cries out. No, wait. She didn't slip. She was shoved. And was that? It was. Titania, he says, in a way that sounded much like other men say prayers. She had given him that particularly delicious back massage. Who would dare to hurt her? The analytical side of his brain knew he was a little drunk and curiously watched what he would do. Is there a balcony? 50-50 chance. I roll a 5. No, but... The drunk side of him slammed open the window, and he's partially out the window before a sudden stiff breeze sends flurries of snow into the room. He blinks against the cold flakes and sees Titania being pulled into the darkened alleyway. She turns and strikes at one of her assailants. The man curses and grabs her about the waist. She kicks and cries out before a hand smothers her cry. She reaches out with one hand towards Renchant as she is pulled into the darkness of the alleyway. I'm coming, he huffs and yanks on the corner of his robe that is caught on the windowsill. Below him, some 10 feet, a half-slanted roof burdened by snow and ice covers the entrance to the back door and the snowy courtyard that his room overlooks. He is leaping down. There is an athletics difficulty of 15 that he needs to break, and he doesn't have any bonuses on this. He rolls a 16, though. He lands on the roof below in his stockinged feet and remains upright as he slides off the roof and lands in a flutter of robes onto the ground below. If only Titania had seen him, that was amazing. Lantern light spills out onto the snow in a golden nimbus. Titania! He shouts, the stiff breeze kicking up more snow into his face as he strides towards the alleyway. He's becoming slowly aware that his feet are quite cold now. Can he see her now that he's growing close to the alleyway? I think there's a 50-50 chance, and I get an 8. That's a yes. She cries out as she's pulled around the corner at the far end of the alleyway. Renchant, trembling now with a mixture of anger and the effects from the cold, begins chanting. He casts mage armor. The arcane energy thrums inside of him, almost physically warming him with its ecstasy. He hurries after her. He rounds the corner and sees her. Is she wounded? There's a 50-50 chance, and I get a 6. Yes, but it's not bad. She's holding an arm against her chest and is on her knees in the snow. Her hair hangs about her face. Her shawl is stamped down into the muddy snow. Her dress hangs off one shoulder. Do those who attacked her run? I think that is somewhat unlikely, and on a roll of a 1, I get a no and. They are here to stay. Renchant runs up to Titania. His mind is yammering to him through the haze of wine. Titania, are you hurt? And that's when they attacked. He had little warning, but somehow through the haze of alcohol, he heard a door swing open and heard threatening movement. The stealth roll for the enemy was a measly 9 total, and he has a passive perception of 13, so he's not surprised, but he's unfortunately dead last in the initiative. Are they aware he's a mage? I think that's likely. On a roll of an 8, I get a yes. The crystal atop his staff is a dead giveaway, and I'd guess they'd not attempt this little adventure against a trained mage had they not something sneaky up their sleeves. I'll say their weapons all have a coating of a basic poison on them. He hears the twang and clack of crossbows. Instinct compels him to duck. He slides on his knees in the snow and brings up his staff as the barbs dart past him. One of them is deflected from his magical shield. He grabs Titania's arm. Move, girl, this way. What does she do, or what happens to her? Dispute/environment. She cries out, tries to follow, but slips on some ice, tugging on his robes, causing him to stumble as well. One of the barbs from behind cuts his side. He takes 3 damage from that. He got a total of 13 to resist the poison, so no extra damage or effect this turn. By the way, I am trying out some interesting rules for intoxication that I will put on my show notes on my Patreon page. Renchant has a toxicity threshold of 13 and has had maybe 3 drinks of mulled wine. I don't know how much alcohol is in that myself, never having taken alcohol. So I rolled on a D10 scale and got a 9, so I'm going to say the wine was strong. So he has an intoxication level of 9 at the moment. Not enough to cross the threshold, so everything is basically just flavor. The sting of pain and the warm ooze of blood from his side brings him to startling clarity. It was a setup, but was she in on it? He wasn't sure yet. Either she was a very convincing actress, or she really did look up at him with those eyes, with that pleading fear. Renchant curses and utters a spell, and the air blurs about him, shifting and melding with him, making him harder to spot, where one moment he's there and then not, the illusion shifting an image of him moving a step to the left and to the right, backwards, randomly. 3 attackers rush to surround him, wielding scimitars and maces, while a 4th grabs Titania and struggles with her. She screams and bites his arm, but he holds fast. With so many weapons trying to hit Renchant, it's only a matter of time before one of them gets lucky. Sure enough, a dagger scores the surface of his forearm. Renchant hisses from the pain, but he resists the poison again. They do get disadvantage because of his blur spell, but one of them rolled high on both of his rolls. And the leader, a thug, gets advantage if his allies are within 5 feet of his target, so his advantage and the disadvantage will cancel each other out here. He hits Renchant twice, both solid blows, 15 hits total. Ouch. Renchant is now under half his hits, and he failed his concentration save, so the blur goes away. Not good. The only lucky thing is his mace isn't coated with poison. The blow hammered into Renchant. He blocked one with his staff, but the blow still shook him and slammed him down onto one knee. Another near parry knocked him onto his back, and he collapsed onto the ground, groaning. The spell fled from his mind. Bleary eyes looked up at the snow falling from the gray, uncaring skies. The man grinned and raised his mace. Wrenchen uttered a word of command, and a wave of force combined with a thunderclap pushed the men and snow away from him, forcing them backwards. One flew into the trunk of a tree, snow and dead branches falling down on him. Others slammed into walls. They were shaken and groaning, but not seriously hurt. He had a little time. He picked himself up. He rolled some mad damage there, 5 total only, and 2 of those made their con save and only took 2. Wrenchen didn't want to leave the weeping girl, but he couldn't handle all these assailants all at once. He had to somehow even the odds. "Be brave," he told her, and then he ran back the way he had come. His spell had created an opening, and so he wasn't engaged in his flight back down the alley. Do his friends who are in the stables with the animals asleep hear the thunderclap? I think that's likely. On a roll of a 9, there's a yes. Will they come and investigate? I'll say that's somewhat likely. They don't know it's Wrenchen who's in trouble, though. I roll a 4 and get a no, but they wake up, grab their weapons, and are alert. "After him!" the leader roars, and Wrenchen's assailants are in pursuit. The one that had hold of Titania runs up and grabs the girl again just as she is attempting to flee after Wrenchen. She bites the bandit's hand again, but he continues to hold her. One of the others chases after Wrenchen and slashes at his back. Wrenchen turns, and the blade collides with his magical defenses. A spider web of cracks appears momentarily in an energy shield around him. That's his mage armor coming into play there. He's in the narrow alleyway, and the others can't reach him. One picks up his crossbow and moves out and aims a shot that flies past his ally. What does the leader do? Create/intrigues. Great, a thinking foe. I'll say that he knows of a way to get behind Wrenchen by moving up and over the roof. It's a difficult terrain, but still. Does he pick up his crossbow first? A 50-50 chance. I roll a 10, a yes and. He picks it up and then takes his time climbing up where a cart with goods is stacked near the roof. He gets advantage next turn on his climb, which will cancel out the difficulty posed by the terrain there. Wrenchen's turn. He raises his staff and points at the bandit in front of him. He casts Scorching Ray. 3 rays of fire erupt from his hand, illuminating the alleyway momentarily in hissing orange light that melts the snow. He'll send all 3 rays into the one man in front of him. Maybe that'll force them to flee, seeing at least one of their own perish. Gets a critical hit on the first, and no need to roll the others, in fact, as the first barb of flame slays the man. He chars the man's head and chest. As the spears of flame lance into him, the man is slammed backwards and lies steaming in the alleyway. "Now you've made me angry," Wrenchen hisses as the smoke rises from the burning man. "Leave the girl and crawl back into whatever hole you came from before you all end up 6 feet under." This is him trying an intimidation roll on the guard that's looking up at him in the alley. I'll say it's medium hard, a difficulty of 17, since they do have him outnumbered. Then again, one of their own just had his face charred off, so I'll say he gets advantage on this roll. I got a total of 15 with advantage, so they are not intimidated. Bandit 2 spends his time immobilizing the girl, tying leather bands around her hands and feet and shoving her face first into the snow. Bandit 6, who had seen his buddy get his face melted off, raises his crossbow and shoots at Wrenchen, and then ducks around the corner, not wanting to get a face full of fire spears himself. He rolls a 9 and misses Renchant. Titania is face first on the ground, spitting snow and thrashing against her bonds, but is, for all intents and purposes, immobile. Though she could roll around, I guess, since he didn't tie her to anything. She's not gagged, though, and lets out an ear-splitting scream. Do Renchant's companions come? I think that's somewhat likely. But on a roll of a 4, the Oracle disagrees with a no, but... Still no reinforcements today. His friends figured that there were lots of guards about earlier in the day in the city, and the guards must be taking care of things. That's a good question. Are there guards about right now? I get a 50-50 chance on a 4? A no. Not at the moment. The attackers knew their routes and attacked when their patrols would be furthest from the inn. The thug climbs the roof. With a difficulty class of 15 with the snow, I'll say he has advantage. A 19 puts him firmly on the top of the roof for one action. For his other, he loads his crossbow. Renchant can see Bandit 2 pressing the girl down into the snow, just as the man stands and pulls up his crossbow. Renchant sends 3 shafts of fire into the man as well. Another Scorching Ray spell there. He hits on all 3, and the spears stab into the man, sending him tripping over the girl and falling back, steaming and blackened into the tree. For his other action, Renchant calls his familiar out of the ether to be the drone in the sky and give him situational awareness. He can now see the thug climbing atop the roof, his crossbow out. Bandit 6 slides out, shoots again, and then ducks around behind the corner again. Titania rolls over to the fallen bandit and begins rubbing her bonds against the scimitar's edge. Renchant commands his familiar to fly about the thug's head just as he reaches the V of the roof. The thug, distracted with the batting of wings about his face, has to make a balance check to remain atop the roof. The DC is 17, I'll say, because it's very slippery. He rolled a 16, but doesn't have an ability bonus, and so slides. Does he fall backwards? A 50-50 chance is a 6. Yes, but... He falls backwards and slides off the roof, spinning around as he falls. Does he fall onto the cart? I think that's somewhat unlikely, but on a roll of a 9, I get a yes. So, instead of taking 3d6, he'll only take 2d6 damage falling. He falls hard under the cart and is bruised and battered and angered more than anything else. He picks himself up and decides the roof is not worth the effort and dashes around the alley, intent on finishing Renchant. Did he lose his crossbow in his fall? I think there's a 50-50 chance. On a 6, I get a yes, but... Yes, but he draws his mace. Renchant opens his hand, and 3 vibrating orbs of force slam into the thug. Magic missile there. As he rounds the corner, rocking the man backwards, nearly dropping him. Cursing and groaning, blood dripping from the man's mouth, he presses on against Renchant, his bloodlust up. Renchant gave him 12 additional damage. That thug is now quite hurt. Does Bandit 6 notice that Titania is free? There's a 50-50 chance, and on a 3, he gets a no. He moves up behind the thug and shoots at Renchant over his shoulder. And he criticals against Renchant, and thankfully only gives 6 additional damage to Renchant. But mages aren't exactly damage soakers. Renchant has only 3 hit points before he goes unconscious. Titania, now free of her restraint, snatches up the scimitar, and she dashes up behind Bandit 6, slashing at his back. It wasn't an elegant attack. The man spun and raised his forearm to ward off the blow, but she brought the blade down, club-like, on his head. He crumples and falls, bleeding in the snow. Renchant's owl familiar flies down around the thug's head, distracting it. It'll be at disadvantage to attack. The thug ignores the owl, ignores the girl, and with a roar attacks Renchant. Good thing he is at disadvantage. He missed. Renchant shouts, tilts his staff towards the man, and 3 more shards of dark force slam into the thug, giving him 12 more damage. Just as the mace is about to smite Renchant down, Instead, the shards of night send the large man flying backwards, sliding in the snow at the alley, dead. Wrenchant, bloodied, and bruised, with torn and sodden robes, leans heavily on his staff, and looks at an equally battered Titania across from him in the alleyway. A certain something passes between them, a moment of shared survival. "I think you owe me another massage, girl," he says with a bit of a huff. He hobbles over to her to help her up. In the darkness of the alleyway, Wrenchant can barely make out her face, but he can tell she's smiling with relief. She pulls her dress back over her bare shoulder and accepts his help. Her eyes are dark liquid pools as they stare up at Wrenchant's face. "You've earned it, Master Mage." They quickly pick through the bodies. Titania takes a scimitar and a light crossbow. Then, shivering together, Wrenchant's arm around the young woman, they head back to the inn. Thank you for joining us, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed what you experienced. If you would like to support Roll, Ponder, and Play, you can do so in a number of ways. You can give the show a positive review on your podcatcher of choice. You can share the show with your friends and family and on your socials. Nothing beats word of mouth as a way to bring in new listeners. You can join my Patreon at patreon.com/Roll, Ponder, and Play. There you can find show notes and transcripts, as well as other projects I'm involved in. And paid subscribers get access to subscriber-only episodes, shows, and other content. Finally, you can simply reach out to me and say hello. Comments from you are what inspire me to keep doing this, and I'd sincerely love to hear what you think of the show. To do so, you can find me on my Patreon, or on Discord at Roll, Ponder, and Play, or by email at rollponderandplay@gmail.com. Until we meet again on Roll, Ponder, and Play, may your own dice rolls ever bring you success.